the saints of the church come in all shapes and sizes, from impoverished hermits to brave warriors and noble kings. One of these kings is the subject of today's episode, Saint Istvan, King of Hungary. The name Istvan is the Hungarian pronunciation of the name Stephen or Stefan, so if you ever visit Budapest, tourist maps will guide you to St. Stephen's Basilica, but for this episode we'll use the Hungarian pronunciation of Istvan, and the name was given to him at his baptism and appropriately means crown. Istvan's birth name was Vaik, an old name that appropriately also meant hero. When Istvan took the crown, the Christian faith was still relatively new in Hungary. Saint Hierotheos, a missionary from Constantinople, had come here in the 10th century to bring the faith. Istvan's father had been a nominal Christian, not really taking it very seriously but allowing it in his country, but Istvan decided to take Christianity seriously, and that through Christianity he would be able to unite the tribes of Magyars into a unified culture and nation and faith. Istvan is at an interesting crossroads, both geographic and historical, in the history of Christianity. He is at a spot right between the Orthodox East and the Catholic West. He was crowned king at the very turn of the millennium and died only a few years before the Great Schism between the Catholics and the Orthodox. These external issues of the church that were happening around him didn't really bother or affect Istvan that much because he had a hard time just within Hungarian borders. There were lots of infighting and problems as various warring pagan Magyar tribes came and fought against him and his new idea of Christianity for the country. But despite the battles, the tensions and the assassination attempts, Istvan eventually united the tribes of Magyars into the country of Hungary and formed the beginning of the Hungarian nation. Even though he was canonized by the Catholic Church within a century of his death, it wasn't until the 20th century and the arrival of increased groups of Eastern Orthodox Christians in Hungary that the Orthodox Church has also added him to our calendar of saints. During his reign, he managed to bring about an unprecedented peace into Hungary, and this peace was known even beyond the borders of his own country. Pilgrims actually diverted their journeys to pass through this nation. In the words of one French writer of the 11th century, those from Italy and Gaul who wished to go to the Holy Sepulchre at Jerusalem abandoned their usual route, which was by sea, making their way instead through the country of King Stephen. He made the road safe for everyone, welcomed as brothers all he saw, and gave them enormous gifts. This action led many people, nobles and commoners, to go to Jerusalem. This safety extended also to pilgrimage routes from Western Europe going through Hungary to places like Constantinople, and Istvan funded pilgrim houses or hostels in Italy and in, of course, Hungary, but also in Constantinople and Jerusalem. Istvan himself was really loved by the pilgrims that passed through the country because they often met him. He would come to talk with them and to eat with them. In his later years, it was also reported that Istvan would wash the feet of beggars and stay up all night at long vigils in churches and monasteries. Coins became popular souvenir tokens from Hungary, and they've been found all over Europe, to such an extent that there are even forgeries of these coins being found as far north as Sweden. Istvan was a much-loved Christian king. Only one of Istvan's sons lived into adulthood. But at the age of 24, Prince Imre died in a tragic accident, and Istvan was heartbroken. This wasn't just a grief at losing a son or even an heir, but a person that he trusted to preserve the truth of Christ in the nation of Hungary. A few years later, Istvan lay dying. He was fearing for the future of his country and for the Christian faith that he had spread across it, and he cried out in prayer. During his prayer, he understood what he would do. He decided to give his crown to the one human being that he could trust to look after the nation and to guide people into the love of Christ. He surrendered his crown to the new sovereign of Hungary, Christ's mother, the Theotokos. Her he entrusted to guide his beloved people. Having done this, the crown was no longer his, and even though all of his successors wore the crown, it was no longer theirs. It became known as the Holy Crown, and for 1,000 years it has remained the greatest treasure of the Hungarian people. The day after he made this dedication, on the 15th of August, Saint Istvan died. It was the feast of the Dormition, and Istvan entered into eternity upon the same date that the new ruler of Hungary did. It wasn't an easy history from there. For several years after Istvan's death, various factions battled for the crown, but eventually Istvan's Christian faith was held and preserved in Hungary. Istvan's dynasty, the House of Arpad, had so many saints in that era, it became known as the kindred of the Holy Kings. Istvan's legacy lives on. Beethoven wrote a symphony about him. His face is on coins and notes to this day. Streets are still named after him. St. Istvan's Day in Hungary is the biggest celebration of the year. The streets are lined with people, there are fireworks going off, and there is even a procession of the bejeweled hand, the relic of St. Istvan, going through the entire streets of Budapest. Centuries and centuries on, he is still loved as a king. Hungarian students still read the writings of Saint Istvan, and from them we can take one small piece of advice to share about how to be a good king. Finally, be strong, lest prosperity lift you up too much, or adversity cast you down. Be humble in this life, so that God may raise you up in the next. We're accompanying this episode with a tea blended with bergamot, forest fruits, and caramel. And it's been a long time coming, this episode. My brother and I lived in Hungary for a while, and so this episode is for our friends there. We miss you.